Yeah, hi everyone, and welcome to the AC Solar Warehouse and Aiko How to Sell Aiko Masterclass. Firstly, I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy day to be here with us. We know that November is a busy time for everyone, and we want this to be a useful and productive use of that time. Secondly, if anyone has any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat, and I'll attempt to answer them. If I can't get to it, I'll definitely follow up with you after. For those who don't know me, my name is Alder Martz, and I'm an account manager here at AC Solar Warehouse. Before I introduce our speaker, I want to touch on why AC Solar Warehouse is hosting this webinar. And I think it can be condensed into three main points. So the first has to do with why we decided to partner with Aiko as one of their distributors in Australia. When I first saw their partial shade optimization, I was immediately skeptical. But when I dug further into it, not only was I blown away by the technology and what that means for a homeowner, but I was also impressed by Aiko's innovation and desire to offer a point of difference. And as we will learn today, that shade optimization is only the cherry on top. So first of all, Aiko's desire to be innovative in the market, that's my first point. And that brings me to the second, a point of difference. Aiko's panels have a genuine point of difference that directly results in systems generating more energy. If you could pay a few dollars more per panel and get panels that have multiple methods of harnessing more energy, would you think that's a good deal? When you're able to offer something that is genuinely going to improve a customer's experience with solar, you stop competing on price and start competing on value. So I was scrolling a Facebook solar group this week, and I saw a homeowner ask for advice on two quotes. Both quotes had the same inverter. One had a common 440-watt panel, and the other had the Aiko Neostar. And after reading the comments, it became clear to me that the homeowner had not been given any education on what sets the Aiko panels apart. And if they had, there wouldn't have been any doubt in their mind with which quote to proceed. And that's why we wanted to host this masterclass, to give you all the information to effectively communicate and educate your customers on the benefits of Aiko and tailor that message to different people's wants and needs. So those are my 3 points: innovation, a point of difference, and education. And that's why we've partnered with Aiko and why we decided to run this masterclass. So without any further ado, please let me welcome Thomas Bywater. Thomas really needs no introduction. He's been in the industry longer than 99% of us. Many of you might already know him from a past life. He's fluent in Mandarin and loves sporting events with really great crowds. So Thomas, take it away, man.
Yeah, except for the Swans Grand Final, I didn't like that one too much. That was terrible. So that's a little dig there, I think, from Elder. Conversations over dinner. Got to be careful of the secrets I share with you. My name's Thomas, and I'm one of the engineers here at Aiko Solar. And so I have a long history in supporting installers on the roof over the last decade in the solar industry, involved with the Installers Association. So that is SEIA. And I've obviously installed hundreds, maybe thousands of systems as well. So hopefully that experience plays through into what we're able to do for you in this session. So today's session is about sales. So up until now, the other sessions, they have been about technical training. So that's like your CPD, how to install clamping zones, that sort of thing. This one's a bit different because we wanted to address that issue that Elder brought up about how do we sell a product. And part of that's about the panels that you use, and part of it's about your other processes. So today is going to be a long one. So if you don't have a notepad or you'd like to get one together, I'd suggest to pull that out because we are hoping to cover some quite deep content here, and there is quite a bit of meat here for you. So it'll be different than when you're seeing the normal thing that's CEC related or SAA related. So if I could get Elder just to take a look at that screen and make sure it's coming across, so we don't present the whole day without the slides there. But you should be seeing a slide on ethics on your screen there right now. That's what I'm seeing. And I just want to say a little bit on ethics before we get going. So many of us electricians and engineer type people can be a bit hesitant to learn about sales because they're worried about that being something that is tricking the customer or something nefarious. And really, our only idea here is to identify those whose solar is good for, so that we're helping them, and then to bring them across to our company because we're doing the best that we think we can do in the industry. So that's a genuine interest to serve the clients well. And if I was to, for example, go to France traveling, I would maybe learn some sayings in French. I would learn some of their customs and etiquette, and that would help things go better between the both of us. It's not I'm trying to trick French people that I'm a French person. It's just that we're trying to find a good way to cooperate together to solve a problem. So that's really what it is about in terms of ethics, the process of selling. So you guys are helping people with your job. So every time you do a great system for someone, they're going to save money. Every time you do a great Aiko system, they're going to save more money. They're going to fit more on their roof than they would have with another solution. So you're doing something great for the customers. If we wanted to look forward to the types of products that you're selling, then we're hoping that you'll be more confident and have some pride in what you're doing, selling the products from Aiko, because of the fact that these are the best products on the market. So that does also speak to that ethics in your selling. Like, you know, of all the panels on the market, these are the ones that have the highest performance. So selling that to your customers, actually doing them a service. Before we go into what I'm going to train you on today, I'm sort of assuming that you've got some of the basics down pat. And I think it was Stephen Colbert that said that when you presume things without saying it, you're peeing on your resume. And the other common one, of course, is assumptions make an ass out of you and me. So when you assume things, things can go wrong. So I just wanted to be clear that I have expected that you've got knowledge of sales terms. So things like what is a lead, prospecting, targeting. If that's something that's new to you, then maybe we can talk about that in another session. But I'm assuming that you've been selling for a little while. You understand that the leads are the people attracted to doing solar, and that you're able to go out there and talk to them about the quality of their leads, the quality of their interest in solar, and what that means from a sales point of view. And then, of course, your basics need to be under control. So customers tell us they want to be called back very quickly. So within 90 minutes, people expect to get a call back if they are calling you. And then other things like personal hygiene. So I'm assuming that you've got a process at your business to make sure when people come out to site, they're well groomed, they're wearing clean clothes, they've got body odor under control. So a lot of tradies come off the job very sweaty, out to see the customer. There can be some interesting situations that happen. So you've got to have those things under control. And then, of course, is the eye confidence. So we do eye contact and confidence. So we do see some people coming to site, not looking at the customer, not building that rapport with them. So I'm assuming you've got those things under control. And then, of course, we're understanding that you know about solar, like what panels are on the market, what are the benefits that customers can get from solar, and ideally some social proof. So that means you've got some before and after case studies from your business, and you're showing that to people as proof of what they can achieve with solar. So we're assuming in our process today that all of those things are covered. Just if you do have any questions in the during the session, I'll get you to put that into the chat, and Elder will assist me in looking into that. So speaking back to that product knowledge and having that confidence with the customer, I think knowing who you're working with is helpful there. So all through the presentation, I'm going to share things with you, and I would encourage you to think about that as, how can I use what has been said with my end customer? So for example, if I talk to you about the aesthetics of the panel, think in your head, like, how could you use that? And then that curiosity will help you to get more out of what we're talking about here. Elder, I believe we've got a little poll that we would like to run during the show. So is it something that you can activate that poll, or is that something that I need to kick off here? Okay, survey. Let me just have a look. Okay, it's there. So there is a survey active. I might get if anyone has trouble accessing that survey, I'll get you to put that into the chat, and Elder can help you with that. But the purpose of that survey, just to sort of understand where you're coming from with respect to the products that you have there. So we're wanting to see if you've started using Aiko, or if you've never used Aiko. And I can actually see some of the results are coming in there, and quite a few of you have actually sold and installed Aiko already. So that's really encouraging. And we'll come back to the other questions as we go forward. But yeah, back to the topic of Aiko. So some of you have been selling Aiko, so you're familiar with that. Others of you have not yet had that chance. So I just wanted to take you through some of the company things that would be worth knowing if you're thinking about a partner that you're working with. So the key thing is we're taking the major Chinese manufacturers into the innovation space. So up until now, I think the philosophy in China, to some extent, has been about copying and about mass market and about being the cheapest in the market. And the trend that we're trying to break there in Aiko is to have a company that's more customer-centric, that thinks a bit more long-term and brings you some differentiated products. A product that's different, such that you can show your expertise and you can get a sustainable margin for your solar business. So that's really something that's different. And then if we look at the global footprint of Aiko, another difference is we do have that solar research center in Germany, and we have pedigree out of Japan. Our CTO is one of the solar pioneers from Kyocera, and we have exposure around the globe, different technicians from France and from Taiwan and so on, and even from Australia. So it's a really global effort that goes into making these panels. So you can tell your customer you're working with a company that is tier one. So I think the tier one's a really key point. It's a company that's really good at design, and that's why they've won the Red Dot. And it's a global company that draws not just on China, not just on Australia, but on the expertise in Europe and in Japan as well. So when you talk to a, there's some issues there. The click meetings are not really working as planned there. But basically, what we're showing here on the screen is that the customer doesn't really care about France and Germany so much. What they do care about is the ability to connect with Australia. And at Aiko, we have our office in Australia, full subsidiary, and then we're also listed in places that you would expect, like Solar Quotes and so on. So being listed in Solar Quotes, which is this map you see on the screen here, what that graph shows you is that the product is considered a little bit more premium than the mainstream brands here, but not so costly that it's going to maybe break the bank. So that's really what we're getting across here. The other thing about this graph, which many people don't know, is that this chart is designed for companies that have support in Australia. So think about some names that you have heard and you don't see them on this chart. So they've either left the country or they don't have good support. So you have to have staff on the ground in Australia to appear on this list. So if you don't have Australian support, you won't be on here. So that is an important point for your customer. Global company, but with that local presence. I do apologize. There's some challenge with the way this software is presenting today. So earlier testings, we have not seen this glitch, but we're seeing that glitch. So essentially what is happening here is that the panels are verified as being the most efficient. So when you talk to the customer, if you say, look, we've got good panels, it's not as compelling as selling the best panels. So what we're able to do with the Aiko in your pocket, if you're going to market with a 470 or a 475 from Aiko, you're able to say, these are the most efficient panels on the market. This is the most power per square meter that I can offer you. And they have been at that level for the last 20 months. So it's not a dash in the pan, a fly in the pan. This is something that is a permanent situation that Aiko has maintained for a long period of time out in front of the other companies. So the other thing is just that depth behind the company, having worked for the last 15 years on solar cells, which has led us to the point that we are here now. So it was the first company to build a fully automated 5 gigawatt scale cell factory, developed a way to do the metal on the rear side of the panel without silver, and finally integrating the cell and module factory in the same facility. So the cells roll off the cell line and they go into the module line robotically, which is really good. Okay. So we do have a video available of the factory if that's something that would help your process, maybe your website or something else like that we can share. But yeah, the basic upshot of the company is we're trying to be a customer-centric company, and we're trying to make the most of every square inch of the solar panel. Those are really the two areas that put Aiko separate to brands that you've seen on the market. Now, I would like to just go back to that survey and we'll just see where we are there. So on the survey, original question, we have most people have in fact sold and installed Aiko that are here today. So that's interesting. I had another question, which is to think about the available space on rooftops. So I wanted to see how available the space is to you guys. And it seems like for most people, there's either enough, it's roughly sort of half of the actual responses here. And then the other half is in needing more space if you're using batteries. But if we look at these two in aggregate, that's the middle and the bottom selection. What we find is that most people are finding that there are constraints on the size of the roof, whereas before it was the customer's budget that was holding us up. Now it's perhaps the actual available space that is holding us up. So before I go into some more technical detail that is basically features and benefits, I want to just quickly discuss the topic of selling. And we'll go into the selling topic a bit more towards the end here, but I wanted to put some scenarios to you and how they might be different. So a lot of times for us electricians, we've come out of the trades doing domestic sparky work, we've been house bashing, putting power points in or so on, and then we've sort of stumbled into the retail solar environment. And as the businesses get bigger, we start doing different things. So it's important to realize how they are different. So if it was an electrician, in the old days, people would look up the yellow pages and they'd call you because they needed an electrician and your name was Aaron and you came up first in the phone book. So it was that simple. It was like very much the customer decided to cause a transaction. Now, as we get more sophisticated as a solar business, what we're actually doing is we're going proactive to the market. And there's a few ways we can do that. And the way the leads come in is different. So if, for example, we were to go to the Eka in Brisbane or the Sydney Easter Show, or we were to go to a shopping centre and have a stand, many of the people that we interact with in that situation don't know much about solar. We have to get their attention. We have to quickly communicate the benefit of solar. So those people we can treat as greenfield inquiries or basically newbies to solar. So it's important to understand that those guys don't know the benefits. So many people who don't know that solar is not decorative, like they might think it doesn't work. They may not understand how it saves you money. Like they may think it just charges your car battery or something. Like the idea of how solar works is foreign to many people. So you need to understand that if you're doing that or planning to do that and you haven't done that before. The other that we commonly come across is the residential leads. So I think in this case, we're not having to spend as much time educating people about is solar good for you or not. But it's important we don't assume, again, why the customer is buying. So we need to keep those questions front of mind. Why are you doing solar? And that will get us in tune with their interests. And finally, when we're approaching companies to do solar in the commercial setting, what we're actually trying to do with our first interaction is just get a meeting with these people. So normally a commercial sale, there'll be more than one person involved with that for C&I. And it will change our approach because we want to create situations where those decision makers can be together. And that's normally going to be a meeting. So whereas our job with a trade show stand or a stand at the Eka or shopping center, our job is to first get attention. Then it's to quickly show a benefit. Then it's to convert. In the lead space, we're just trying to educate customers why our business is more successful. And finally, the C&I case, we're needing to get meetings. Basically, that's our job. So it's a little bit different in our approach. So I do plant those seeds with you to sort of look at when I share other information to you, how would you use that in a trade show setting? Like how could maybe Aiko panels be more successful when you were at the local show? If you were on the phone, what is something you could say from the content today that would help you to persuade a buyer to do a house inspection with your team or to have a meeting with your team for commercial? So we just talked about the what. The other thing that's going to influence how people work with you and how you get on with them is their personality types and what they're trying to achieve. So there's one of these things is kind of passive, or to say another way, you need to observe it. And the other one, you need to be curious about it. So what do I mean by that? So in personality types, what we need to be doing is observing from interactions with the customer and things they talk about, what kind of person they are. From our own mental health point of view, sometimes just understand there will be people who would waste your time because they're maybe conspiracy theorists. There will be people who are quite abrupt and nasty to you that might be narcissists. Just to not take that personally. So that in our sales interactions, there will be some of those things going on, and just to understand the background to it. Firstly, if you want to persuade them, what kind of personality they are. If you're having a negative experience, just understanding part of the population has some challenges. Finally, we need to get to the pain points. So a lot of times, solar retailers don't adequately highlight the pain point to the customer. Many customers have a really surface level understanding of their pain point. So they know they would like to save money, but they've never thought about it over 10 years. They know they want to be independent, but they don't know what does that mean, just the lights, just the fridge. And what the penalty is if they do back up and it doesn't work, what's the penalty? They haven't thought about the fridge going off with a meat in it. So we're going to look at that a little bit further. But I just wanted to plant those seeds, which is the type of transactions, the what is important to think about when you're taking in my information. And then the other thing is thinking about the types of people that you're going to be interacting with, because the who will also change how you would want to deal with them. Okay, so just go back to that survey and just have one last look here. So we had a look at the site type, and we found that quite a few houses or quite a few jobs don't have enough roof space. And we've also looked at the topic of personalities here, just to think if there's any challenges in that space. So some of you are saying that that you can easily relate to people, and it doesn't sort of matter who they are, it's all the same. And then a majority or a larger amount of people are saying, look, there are those distinct personalities in the market. So we're going to be looking at that as we go forward. Okay, so when Aiko have designed their products, they've been thinking about the challenges in different markets and what those are. In the residential space, the challenges are different to utility. So in utility, maybe you can get away with having a very basic panel, not very long cables. In residential, you're going to need more of an aesthetic focus. You're going to need things like longer cables so you can connect end phase or optimizers. And so we have designed the products with that in mind. But the key thing that I would like you guys to take away from in terms of what Aiko is going to offer you is 3 weapons in the face of the commercial landscape. So the first one that people do miss a lot is safety. So in the past, if I was doing, for example, brand A 440, and then we were changing to do brand B 440, maybe I can talk about, this brand comes from the land of the polar bears, and this brand is the biggest one in the world or whatever. But essentially, those panels are quite similar in what they offer the customer. And it's only really subtle quality differences in the product. Now, with the Aiko, what we actually have is some fundamental benefits that are different. So the feature is, let's say, the toughened glass with the 40 mil hailstone test. And what that actually gives your customers peace of mind. So it gives them the safety aspect. The other thing is that the panels do not get as hot, which we'll go into. But we call that temperature restriction, which just means the panels are prevented from getting extra hot in certain shading and soiling situations, which we'll cover shortly. But the panel basically offers you a peace of mind benefit that we haven't seen before. So this Aiko choice, when you choose Aiko, yes, you do get more power, the 470 versus 440 or the 455 versus 440. You're getting more power, that is true. But you're getting safety. And it's probably the first time we've had someone come to market with a product that is safer than the other products on the market. If you're doing end phase, if you're doing optimizers, that's going to be a great partnership for what you're offering the customer. So how would you use that in a sales situation where you're going to say to the customer, look, here's all the benefits for you about solar. Here's the benefits of working with our company. And the products we choose, we've chosen what we've found to be the most efficient and the safest on the market. Those are things we've looked for, and we've found that in our partner, Aiko. So you don't need to go into heaps of detail with the end user in most cases. Most cases, it's about your story as a quality installer, giving them peace of mind as an installer, and about the savings that they're going to get. And then the icing on top is the safe panels, the safe end phase or solar edge that you might be doing from AC Solar Warehouse. So we mentioned about the safety. The other thing is the power. So our panels, of course, they do have more power. And what that can mean is you can fit a bigger system on the roof. So that's key for people to understand. Because although we're in the industry, we know, a bigger panel can fit more on the industry, fit more on the roof. But people who are outside the industry, they don't necessarily know what it means to have more power per panel. They may think it's just like a V8 engine. Having more power is probably good, but what benefit does it give you? It gives you a bigger system. What does a bigger system give you? It gives you more energy, more savings. So you can talk about saving space there, or you can talk about fitting more on the roof. And there can be a way that you can be smart here. So you could, for example, you could stay away from the gutters further, and you could sort of say, well, I'm going to be actually a little bit further back from the gutters because I've got less panels here. My panel's a bit shorter, and you're going to have an easy job of cleaning your gutters with the solar there. Like, those are the kind of things that you can do. Higher returns, of course, so particularly for C&I customers, particularly for people wanting to charge batteries, the back contact gives you more yield. So for the same system size, you would typically get more energy. And as we said before, you can normally fit a bigger system on anyway, so that will naturally have more energy. So those are the three things that we like to look at. Typically, we say ultra safe, it's tough, it's smaller than other panels for the same power, so it's tiny, and it has good return, so it's terrific. So tough, tiny, and terrific is how we think about it. So I do apologize. There's a problem with these slides here today. But essentially what happens is every time you put on let's say a 475 compared to a 440, what that means is that each panel that you're putting on the roof is going to give you about 4 light bulbs worth of power per panel that's going up. So if you think about you putting up 20 panels and there's 4 of them there, then it's like having 80 extra light bulbs worth of power for that same size. So what we're trying to do with this picture here is to relate the difference to something people have in their life already. So anytime we're illustrating a concept to customers, what we want to do is 2 things. One is we want to break big numbers down into little numbers. So from a cost standpoint, it's not $2,000. It's like spending $5 a day. That's the kind of breakdown we want to do. When we want to talk about the differences, we want to relate it to their life and visual things that they can grasp onto from their existing memories. That just makes the communication easier. Okay, so I'm just going to see if this video will play for you here. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on, but we are having some challenges with this version of Click to Meeting. So Click Meeting unfortunately did an upgrade today, has caused a couple of things to break on us. But I will refer you offline, or perhaps Elder can put into the chat just a link to the videos there on the partial shading. The key thing to understand from the point of view of Aiko is it offers a new benefit in shade management. So shade management doesn't replace Enphase or replace the optimizing functions of your inverters, or it doesn't replace SolarEdge. It just offers a way to have more optimizing, so at a granular detail. So we think about it like a car. So if the car had brakes and a steering wheel, we're just making those brakes a little bit better, that you still need that steering wheel. And so those technologies like Enphase and SolarEdge, they perform that function of the steering wheel, making sure the whole system works well together. And our system helps just to make the panel's output better for that specific panel, and also to be safer. So that's the contribution that we're making. And then if you look at MLPE and Enphase, what they're doing is helping that whole system to run better together. And they're also helping to maintain the safety of that system in terms of isolating it remotely and things like that. What we have found, and this has been tested by TUV, is that for a shaded cell on a panel, our performance for individual panels will increase by 30% relative to a TopCon panel. Now, the important thing is that's for the panel that's shaded. For the system as a whole over the day, you don't normally have a panel with the tree for each panel. So typically, if there's an obstruction like a power pole or an antenna or something like that, it's going to cast a shadow that's on one panel at a time, and it's going to sweep across that roof. So it's not fair to say the whole system will increase its output by 30%. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying for that shaded panel, you can see those increases, and you can test that for yourself with a little pump and with some panels and shading the panel. You'll see the diodes operate or they don't operate, and you'll see that benefit. So the question then becomes, what situations might you have shade? And if you're doing a CNI job, you're potentially going to have chimneys on the roof, which shade the roof. And we can see there's some significant gains on the individual panels in that environment. It could be as much as 50% for that specific panel. So this is talking about one particular panel here. In a system-wide basis, it's going to depend on the exact obstruction that you have on the roof and how many there are for you. But if you think about it as being one panel showing this benefit, it goes across, let's say, 10 panels, it sweeps across them. We see that benefit for the whole system somewhere in the vicinity of that 5%. And that plays out the same way as when we have soiling on the panel. So this is thinking about actually as a system. For a system, if we have soiling at the bottom edge of the panel, what we actually see is that the TopCon will be behind the ABC for yields about 5% because of this obstruction. The challenge with shading is that every site is going to be quite different. So what we'd encourage you to do there is to not charge any extra for this function, but put it in as a benefit, and also to think about it as a way to deal with minor shading and not, for example, big blocky things like a building. So you could, for example, have an office tower next to the house that you're working on, big blocky shade, you won't see a benefit. Where you see the benefit is on those smaller isolated shades, like a tree, like a power pole or an antenna. That's where you're going to see a benefit with this technology. So thinking about if we were in a hot location or potentially during summer, temperature and the heat is top of mind. So the temperature coefficient of Aiko is the best on the market of the major brands. There is one brand with a lower or better temperature coefficient, but of the major brands, this is the best one. And that means that you're able to say, look, this will work very well in the heat compared to other panels. So thinking about the country that we live in and the heat that we face here in Australia, this is actually the best choice for that. So all equipment, computers, Game Boys, switches, solar panels, when they get hot, they work a little bit less well. Ours drops off less than the competing TopCon and PERC types of panels. And it's significantly better than PERC. So if you're competing on a commercial job and your competitor's using, let's say, a P-type 550 and you're using the N-type, you'll be able to smash them on that particular topic because the heat performance of the back contact is much superior to PERC and is, of course, better than TopCon. And the other thing is over the lifetime of the product, the degradation is less compared to other technologies. So this might come up in the topic where someone is looking to live in their house for a long time, or they're going to hand the business or the house down to their children. It's important to know that in a couple of decades' time, the degradation will be minimal on this product, and certainly within the next 5 to 10 years, you'll start to see that benefit. So on the screen there, we just got a little picture to illustrate the difference between how the panels work. This is not really for your end users, right? This is just to give you that confidence that you know why the panels are working well. So remember, we talked about sales being basically you having to shift your confidence on the success of solving the problem to the customer. And the customer then is in the frame of mind of needing to make a change. And they need you to be confident so they can be confident to make that change. And you can be confident if you understand why the products are better, then you can do a better job of selling them. So if we take a look at this screen here, on the left-hand side is your normal old style of panel. So you would have the metal on the front of the cell, which will be your anode here, which is silver normally. On the rear side, it's normally aluminium. And what happens is the photons come in, that light comes in, and it agitates the electron hole pairs here, and they start to form a current. If this cell was to be shaded, that whole block there is like a resistance, and current can't flow between these two plates. Look over here on the right-hand side, that's your back contact. The back contact has a clever situation where the contacts are on the back, all that light can get in. And kids and old people can immediately understand if you put things in the way of the light, not as much light gets into it. If you put metal on the front, it's like a shadow on the front of the panel. Take the metal away, more light can get in. So the light comes into the back contact cell, agitates those electron hole pairs here, and they form a current between these two polarities. And that's what lights up our light bulb. Now, the good news is if I was to shade this, so this blue and green line, if I was to make that dark, cover it with bird shit, cover it with a leaf, then the fact that this is a resistor doesn't matter. The current can actually jump between this tiny gap between the contacts here, and it can bypass that cell. And that's what gives you your temperature restriction and what gives you your shade management. So why does back contact have that? It's because the contacts are on the back, out the way of the silicon. The normal panels have contacts front and back. It needs to go through the silicon. And with our technology, we have changed the way the silicon is actually made to maximize the production there. So we can actually use a silicon of a slightly different resistivity than what you can use for normal TOPCon cells. So some of you guys might have been at All Energy. So at All Energy, we actually did a demonstration of dropping a weight onto the cells to see what cracked first. And you could very quickly see, in a way that spoke to your heart, the strength of the ABC panels and the ABC cells. So this is a demonstration that you can see offline on YouTube. And also AC Solar can share you that link. But basically, when you drop a weight onto the back contact cells, they are more resistant to that than TOPCon cells, which will immediately shatter with that 2 kilogram weight dropped on it. And once you put those cells into a panel, the panel itself is stronger. So that's some safety that you're bringing to your customer. So it performs better in hail because the glass is 3.2 mil toughened glass that can withstand a 40 mil hailstone. But even though the hail might fall on your panel and shake it up, and in other situations that might cause micro cracks leading to lack of production, ours is more resistant fundamentally to the micro crack. And even if there's a crack, the metal grid on the back is better at collecting the energy. And all of this for a price point that's not much different to the mass market panels. So there's a question in the chat about, do we make the cells in-house? Yes, Aiko is the second largest manufacturer of cells in the world, and Aiko does make their cells in-house. So again, I do apologize with this upgrade to the Click meeting. It's killed this video function. But what we can share with you is the same principle, which is our panels, when they're shaded, the diodes don't activate. If you get a bird shit on a little bit of a cell, or you might get a leaf on that cell will still get hot, but it won't get as hot as in TOPCon. So in TOPCon, if I was to have ambient temperature 40 degrees out there, or even 30 degrees, I was to have some bird shit covering a cell there, but the rest of the panel was working fine, then what you're actually going to see in that TOPCon panel is that cell will get to 150 degrees. Now at 150 degrees, the solder between the connections of the cells starts to lose integrity. It doesn't become a liquid, but it becomes softer. Our panels, when they have shaded cells and the diodes don't activate, because of that bypass that we saw before, they get to about 100 degrees. So they get 30% less hot in Celsius than what the TOPCon panels will get. So there's a safety benefit. So just to recap what we had said before, the panels offer you the ability to sell something that's tough, something that's terrific, and something that's tiny. And we're going to look at some personality types and how that might relate to what you're going to focus on. Before we do that, I'd just like to suggest some scenarios. So imagine if you were talking to a school. Maybe you're talking to a kindergarten. Maybe you're talking to some kind of chain of daycare centers. You might want to focus on this safety aspect and combine that with your existing knowledge on your Enphase or your Solar Edge, perhaps, to offer them a safe solution that's now double safe, because you've got the safest panels you can find with the safest inverter combination. If you are talking to someone who has a constrained roof, that's a scenario. or they're putting on batteries, your focus will be on the higher power that you're able to put onto the roof. If you're talking to the bean counters, it might be about the yield. If you've got someone with a PPA or you're doing amber or something like that, this higher yield could be attractive to them. So that's just a couple of ideas of how to link these benefits to the customer's actual scenario. So just quickly going to go through some of the panels that are available. So some of these you will have seen, some of them you won't have seen. So there was a question in the chat about the third generation product. So third generation product is not here in Australia as yet. We have installed that product in China in projects. The reason we don't have the third generation product here in Australia is the smaller size of panels hasn't been produced as yet for like mass production. The other reason is the IEC and CEC are very complicated. So we would expect that the IEC and CEC certification for the third gen will finish sometime around June. That's our estimate. So I wouldn't be planning or selling third generation products to your customers at the moment. When they're on the way, AC Solar will be in touch to let you know that that's available. So that third gen product is that one that was at All Energy, and it moves the bus on the top of the panel and in the middle. It moves that bus to the rear of the panel to save some space. That will be around June that comes to Australia. So this one here is our powerhouse. The one on the screen is your 470. I've got those advantages that we talked about, micro crack resistance, temperature protection, so it doesn't get overheated, and partial shading management as well. And it comes with the MC4, as you would expect, 1400mm cables, so you can connect to your solar edge. So I'd be interested to see if anyone's had any trouble with that length of cable. Is that too long? Obviously, we've tried to, that cable is 1200 for that product. 1200 on the small panels. We've based that on the feedback from AC and other people in the network, just hoping to make the job easy enough, but not so much that there's extra cable that you have to tie up too much and cumbersome. So hopefully that's been your experience. The model numbers, just to clue you in on that, 2 means second generation. P is our premium series with the black panel. So you get that panel in Australia as a black frame, 30mm frame depth, with the MC4 connectors, 1200mm cables. This panel is perfect for the scenario that you want to talk about best value, and you want to talk about shading optimization and being compact. We've also got the NeoStar 2S. So the 2S is our superior panel. So just now we had the P for premium. P for premium is your black frame. This one has your full black appearance. So some people say it's the super sexy one. That helps them to remember the S is the full black one. Some people say S for silhouette. Our side, it's the superior. So that 2S product has different flavors. You can get that as a 440. You can get that as a 455. And there's a new one, which I'll show you in a moment. So 2S all black is our kind of carrying cry, I guess you might say, a rallying cry. And our rallying cry is, let's make solar look attractive. So there's so many people out there, interior decorator types, or maybe artists, this kind of people, they have been put off by the appearance of solar. But I know that you guys are using black racking now a lot of times. You're using clever ways to hide your conduit. Some of you have been doing that, which is awesome, selling on skill and not just on price. And this panel helps you to plug into that. It's a beautiful looking panel. It looks great in the drone shots. If people are selling their house, looks good on domain.com. So that's another thing to think about in the scenario. So customer, how long are you going to be here? Oh, we're going to sell in a couple of years. This looks great on the real estate photos, right? Customers like, oh, I run a knitting business or something. They're probably an artist type person. This would be really attractive to them. We've got to try and connect the products to the customer as much as we can. So remember, we're trying to speak French to French people. We're trying to fit into their world, help them solve problems, and help them feel comfortable with their decisions after the fact. So that's that 510. So that's a new one. This is first presentation I've done on this with the 510. So you guys are the first to sort of hear about this in the market. This 510 all black, we see that as having a great home with galleries, with wineries, high-end homes. Maybe you've got to do a ground mount around a particularly impressive manor in Sanford outside of Brisbane, or maybe you're in Dural in New South Wales. and you're not able to fit all the panels on the roof, but they still want everything to be attractive, this is a good way to go. Some customers who worry about glare and worry about the appearance of the panel love this on their commercial buildings. So around the world, we've been doing this product in some massive systems. So these products are all black, but are still going into 400 kilowatt jobs. So the reason is lovely warranty, 25 years, biggest all black on the market. So you can go to your customer and say, look, you got a beautiful building here. I think we want to go for an aesthetic solution. The biggest one that I can do for you, or the most powerful, is this product. So this is similar size to your 475 that you would have seen from the mass market brands. Similar size to, there was a 500 watt panel quite popular in the market recently. It's similar size to that 500, but of course it's 510. It's all black and it has that long warranty. The other one is your 600s. So some of you have seen this already, so we've already got a few jobs going in, and thank you for those of you that have given that a try. I'm really encouraged by the uptake on that panel and just going in and smashing the market from a technical point of view. So you're not smashing it on price, you're going in and saying, look, those are 580s, those are old hat, those are 550s old hat, I've got a 600. I'm going to save your roof space. The other thing is you're going to be saving glass, right? Anytime you use these more efficient products, you're saving on truck trips, that's carbon. You're saving on containers going across the ocean, that's carbon. You're saving on the risk of injury. You're doing less panels on the project. Like, it's just beautiful to use these products for so many reasons. So if you're talking to a sort of risk-averse customer, you can talk about your safety with your glass. You can then talk about the fact that a lot of the panels we have are under 25 kilos, like your 510 and your 440 and your 470. They're all under 25 kilos. This panel, unfortunately, just a little bit above that in weight. So this is a 2-person lift for this product. But this one has a very good hail test also. So this series of panels has a 50 mil hailstone test. It's not the Swiss test. So the one for the residential is the Swiss VKF test. This is just like a standard hail test, 50 mil. Still pretty compelling for those risk-averse customers. There is a question in the chat about the warranty. The warranty on the 510, on the 470 and 455 in commercial is 25 years product. The warranty on this product, the 600, is 15 years. So this one is a bit cheaper per watt than the smaller panels. So because we don't have as many junction boxes and so on, you fit more watts in the container, you end up with a slightly cheaper price, and the warranty is a little bit lower as well. So 15 years warranty on this product here. Finally, if you do have those big projects, and I hope some of you guys are gearing up to provide power to the zinc refinery or the coal mine or something, the 650 is the way to go here. So this one currently shipping at 645. Start of next year, we expect to have that at 650. The trajectory for this product across the next couple of months, the next couple of quarters into Q2 of next year is around 655, 660. And that's also the Stellar in the bifacial. So the one on the screen there is the single glass product, and it has a bifacial. But don't worry too much about that. That's sort of out of your wheelhouse here. So the other thing to think about is if you're doing any jobs that are bigger than 100 kilowatts, whether there's any utility in having extra energy at the start and end of the day. So what we've found is the price of electricity is more valuable at the end and start of the day. If you've got, for example, an Amber account and you're trying to cash in on some of those higher prices towards the end of the day, there may be some benefit in using the Aiko product instead of others if you're constrained on the roof, or even at the site where the main constraint is the internal self-consumption. So if we look at some of the commercial sites, they do have export limiting. So export limiting, essentially what that means is power is only valuable when the customers can use that themselves. But there can be times that you're doing an LGC job. Up until now, maybe your DC ratio has been around that 1.2 level. Maybe you can edge that up a little bit and make better use of the morning and afternoons without having a bigger roof and not worrying about the middle of the day where you might lose some power and have some curtailment. But there are some benefits which we can talk through with you guys offline or with your PPA provider about using Aiko in the sense that you're trying to take advantage of the morning and afternoon peak prices. So there's a question in the chat. What is the Swiss test? So AC Solar can share you that document, but the Swiss hail test is a standard. So Australia, unfortunately, does not have a test for hail on solar panels. So we just use the standard IEC tests. In Switzerland, they've developed a test where they shoot the ice balls at different parts of the panel. So typical test just shoots at one part on the panel, away we go. The Swiss test shoots at the corners, shoots at the edges, so checks the frame. Is the frame going to survive that? Shoots at different parts of the panel. After that, it does an electrical test. The panel has to perform at 95% or above of its original electrical level, otherwise fail. So the beautiful part of that is the panel survives a hail attack, produces electricity afterwards as if nothing happened, basically. So they can drop a little bit, and typically in a test they'll drop 1 or 2% with our products after the 40 mil hail smashes all over the thing. So that's what the Swiss hail test is. There's a question there about how does Aiko generate more power in the morning and in the afternoon. There are two aspects to that. The first thing is the low light performance of back contact is better. So that's the first thing. But the other thing is where you've got a constrained roof, right? So imagine you've got a roof and you can't fit that on to, like, you can't put any more than what you're putting onto the roof with TopCon. Maybe you would then go to our product, and the customer in the middle of the day doesn't get a benefit because their self-consumption is already similar to the capacity of the system. But where they will get a benefit is in the morning and the afternoon. And that will also be true perhaps with your end-phase systems where the micro, it will cap the output at a certain point. But in the mornings, afternoons, winter, and so on, you're going to get a great benefit from putting our panel onto that product instead of a PERC 415 or something like that. The other thing is when you have more compact panels, if you're doing a ground mount, you can leave more space between your rows potentially. And that will let you perhaps avoid erosion if you can establish grass in the middle there. Or it can just assist in having perhaps the biodiversity here. What that refers to is just the plant cover in the field. Or you can sell the extra output for that space. So maybe you choose to put more watts in there instead of culling the number of panels. Just depends on your constraint. There's a mention there about the lawsuit. All of the manufacturers at the moment are fighting between each other about the patents. The one you're referring to is in the Netherlands. That was kicked out. So the way that Aiko makes their panels is different to SunPower. So the basic concept of back contact has been around for many years, and guys like LG and that have been using that, and it's well understood in the literature. But after the courts have examined how Aiko makes our cells and our panels, they've dismissed that because it's not made in the same way and it's not made with the exact same process. So we've developed that process ourselves, and that's why it will actually be hard for some people to copy that. So if you were looking at the PERC and TopCon technologies, the manufacturers of the equipment pass that around. So what that means is if Meyer Burger made, let's say, the PERC or the TopCon equipment, they were doing well in, let's say, company A, they would go to company B and say, hey, I've got this equipment, works awesome, you should do PERC as well. With this technology, because we've developed it ourselves, not from an equipment manufacturer, you won't see that percolation of this technology all through the industry in the next month or something like you saw with TopCon and with PERC. So there's absolutely no issue with that. And that's also one of the reasons why our product has some benefits that are not seen in some of those competing P-type back contacts. They don't have the shade management because it's made in a different way. There's a question also about the REC Alpha Pure RX. Those are great panels because they're not a huge part of the market. We haven't spent a lot of time comparing with them. All we'd say is, look, we really respect what they're doing. Great product. We think where we perhaps have something to offer the customer is on the value front. So we also have great products like them, but we think the appetite for our pricing is it's more practical for most people. So we've talked about the product, and now I'd like to talk about the personality types. Just before we do that, just dip into that survey and just see what people were thinking there. So there's not really been any change to the personality types there. So just little bit interesting for us. So thinking about how we sell products, we wanted to today discuss how you could maybe do a better job of that. So what you might find is you convert 1 in 4 customers. Now that can be a good thing. If your pricing is right, you should have customers that don't want to go ahead. So if you're pricing it in a way that's sustainable for your business, you will have people say no, and that's okay. The question is, are they saying no because they got all of the best information out of you? Or are they saying no because they don't really understand the benefit of solar in a visceral sense, in their heart, in their veins? Sales is an emotional thing. So people try to justify it with logic. Like you see guys saying like, oh, I want to get an electric car because this whatever savings and so on. But if you look at it, the car they've got now, it's probably running fine. Maybe they only go to work 1 day a week. They're working from home. You know, all these sort of things come into it. But it just really wants to buy an electric car. That's a feeling. And it's the same thing like if you go into an office and you talk to your friend and you say, what do you feel like eating for lunch today? You don't like go, what is the economic cost benefit of a sandwich? Right? So in our life, like a lot of times we try to justify with facts, but mostly it's an emotional play. For the vast majority of Australian people here, they could, for example, buy your solar panels or buy other ones. It's not really an economic decision, but they do not want to make mistakes. So that's where we're coming from, and we need to keep that in mind that humans present as being very logical, but in fact are quite emotional. And then going back to our duty to our customer, we have the duty to give them savings, solve that problem for them, make them feel good, which is another kind of problem. And finally, we want to do the best job for them so that they will have a great experience with solar, and they will not, for example, skip the idea of doing solar because of they don't feel confident to go ahead. So that's what I would like to cover here. So our number one competitor is doing nothing. So the question is, how do we get people to do something other than nothing? How do we beat our number one competitor doing nothing? And the first thing we've got to do is we've got to help our clients, our prospects, to understand the problem that they faced. So we've got to tease that out. So teasing out the problem means asking a few more questions and getting the customer talking more. So in an ideal scenario, from our point of view, we think in-home visits are a great way to sell solar and achieve the relationship and the premium that you need to sustain your business. And prior to going there, of course, you're making a good connection through appointments with the customer. Maybe you're sending them a card before you come around, or you're sending them text messages and touching them quite a few different times before you get there. And that will help you to understand their personality. When you're there with them, or perhaps at an earlier stage, you want to understand exactly why they are doing solar. Many times they don't know the problem that they face. So, for example, they understand that bills are high, but do they understand that the bills will go up every year? So you need to dig into their problem and get the facts on the table. So what that might look like is you're talking to people about going solar. You say like, oh, okay, it was great. So tell me, why did you reach out to us about going to solar? And they may turn to you and say something quite unexpected. So they might say, look, I'm about to sell my house. I want to increase the value. Or they might say, I've just got a new house and I'm trying to finish all the jobs. Like some people are now saying, if you haven't got solar in your house, you haven't kind of finished your build. And that's something you can maybe explore with a customer. But generally, it's going to be about savings. So what you would say is like, okay, so tell me about why you came to us wanting to go solar. And they would say, blah, 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 we want to save money, blah, blah, blah. You say, okay, yeah, so you want to save money off your bills, and how much are your bills now? Blah, 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 blah. And you say, okay, so those bills are this much. Do I have that right? Blah, blah, blah. And do you enjoy working with a power company? Like, how do you feel about paying those bills? Feel crap, hate those guys, blah, blah, blah. And then you would get into, for example, have you looked at how much that's going to cost you over 10 years? And they would almost invariably go, what? It's kind of like a pattern interrupt. And then you need to have in your head some ready reckoners of figures around this topic, so that when they say 800, you can go, look, probably over 10 years, simple math, it's going to be 8,000. But considering the inflation and the way prices are going up, you could be looking near to 10,000. and you're planting the seed of factual information that they haven't thought about, so that then when they compare your system price, it's to the overall burden on themselves financially over those 10 years. And the other thing we want to be think about in our sales process is, how do we make people feel secure in their choice? So we mentioned before, sales is about the confidence of you explaining the solution and about helping the customer to make the change. And they're very worried about having paid too much. They're very worried about not being in the company of others. And they're very worried about they're going to get you to work on their house and there's going to be leaks or there's going to be this and that problem. So you've got to think about how can you deal with those issues up front using social proof. So you might have a 1-pager or a 4-pager that talks about the products you use, but also the successful experience of customers with your product for that social proof. The final point, of course, is too many choices is bewildering. So we'd encourage you to focus on just selling Aiko, of course, but keeping those choices to a minimum and getting back to the customer quick. So what we mean by that is, ideally have a process that lets you sign someone up on the day, but not putting them under pressure. If it's looking like it's not appropriate for them to sign up on the day, at least have it that you're going to get that quote out to them quickly. You're better off having a cookie cutter answer than taking a week, 2 weeks to get back to a residential customer. So remember, residential customers expect you to return their call in 90 minutes. So if someone's called you and you haven't rang them back, they're looking for some response in under an hour and a half. Many people probably could be shorter than that. With the quote, a lot of times, depending on the personality type, if they're an action-orientated person, they may be looking to get this off their plate in the next 24 hours. So you're at their house, someone else gives them a price, deal's signed by tomorrow, you come back at the end of the week, it's already gone. So we need to be very quick in our response to customers. And we also need to narrow down those choices. And in fact, if you can get the customer to work with you, so remember, you're doing a good job, right? You've internally, as an ethical salesperson, gone to some of your jobs, you've given feedback to your business on how to make it better, you're doing the best as you can as a business, then it should be an easy choice to go with your business. And you've got to help the customer make that choice and have the choice be between your products that you're offering, 1 or 2 options, rather than between like 15 different companies. The final point, of course, we want to stay away from salesy sounding words. So if you do have a customer who has a quote from you, but they're not going ahead, when you ring them back, like, try not to say things like, just following up, catching in, checking in. Anything that you've heard from other salespeople, try and find a way to say that in a different way that's more approachable. So I've suggested to sort of present that you're busy, and hopefully you are busy, and just sort of say, oh, I've just got a moment to get back on you in this. Where did you see the next steps? That kind of thing, rather than calling to follow up, chasing you, biting your leg off. We want to get away from that sort of thing. There is a question in the chat about glass backing. We do have double glass panels in our range. We've chosen not to do that in Australia for the meantime. The reason is that the single glass product has better hail performance. In the very near term, we see the biggest risk to customers is being hail damage, particularly in Queensland and a little bit more so in New South Wales. Obviously in Tasmania, the size of the hail is smaller, it's less of a factor. But if we look at the mainland states, particularly on the East Coast, hail is a huge risk. It's getting worse. And the 40 mil test applies to that single glass panel. The double glass panels, the glass is thinner, all brands, right? So most brands have a 1.6 mil glass sheet. 2 lots of 1.6 as a sandwich is a way to save money for the manufacturer. It's not to give you a benefit, okay? And that 1.6 mil thickness does not allow for toughening of the glass. So from our side, being a new entrant here to Australia, we've wanted to be the most conservative that we can be in terms of the offering here. And the panel type, which has given the best cyclone and hail test performance for us, and we've also tested at PV Labs here in Canberra, the panel type giving us that result is the single glass. So yeah, we don't have dual glass available at AC Solar at the moment. So stepping away from that basic philosophy and going back to the topic of personalities, it's important to think about the basic types of people that you're going to meet in the market and how you can have resources for those types. So where we see some people being quite sophisticated about this is they will have presentations, they will have brochures that are tailored to particular types of customers. So the classic, of course, would be your conscientious types, which may be more towards that engineer sort of person. And then you've got your influence types, which is more sort of like your wanting to be seen as someone that influences their social group. The narcissist wants to be right, so I don't think that's a surprise. So we do see personality types where they want to be right, and so when you pick up on that, then what you're wanting to make sure is you're not contradicting them in the situation that you're contradicting them. It's something along the lines of yes, and we've also seen X, not like yes but. Because people who are in that frame of mind, which is maybe 5 to 10% of the population, they don't want to be told that they're wrong. They want to hear from you about how right they are. Going to the topic of ADHD, this is a sort of emerging topic. A lot of our sales people have ADHD, which tends to make people a little bit chaotic. So it might be that if you've got this situation on, you're going to have to work on your organization, work on perhaps your punctuality. The hoarder characteristic is something we see more on the customer base. So you just have to figure out how you can deal with those people, make them feel comfortable. Final one is conspiracy theorist. This is a challenge to deal with if you meet them in the shopping center. You haven't convinced them to buy solar, but they want to tell you all about how 5G is hurting your head. The conspiracy theorists sometimes can be very good from an independence point of view. So a lot of the conspiracy theorist type customers are very open to solar as a way to separate from the government, separate from the grid. So particularly in some of our rural communities, we are seeing more people presenting with these philosophies. And the key point there is not to talk about being green and not to talk about saving money per se. It's a way to be independent. So just going to go into some of those personality types now. All right, there's a little problem with that slide, so I'm just going to skip that one. But the basic point of it was to understand again that electricity bill and how much the savings are going to be, and for you to be ready to answer customer questions in a quick way in terms of summing up the overall impact of their decision. So if you don't go ahead with solar, the effect is you're going to keep paying that $10,000 over these 10 years, right? It's not you're going to pay $800, you're going to be $10,000. So you've got to make sure that they get that clear picture. So anyway, going back to the types of customers, essentially there are many personality models in the market. So people talk about Myers-Briggs, people talk about DISC, and people talk about bank. These are some of the popular ones. There are many different models. I'm not saying my model here is the best or the right one. What I'm suggesting for you guys is to look into this as a topic. So personality types and how that affects the way people buy things. So we are interested to look at how bank can be applied, because it is something that can be done on the fly. So a lot of things like a Myers-Briggs test. So Myers-Briggs is a test that you can take to see what kind of personality you have. They've got like 16 types of that. And another one is Ocean. Those aren't practical in the sense that when you go to visit customers, you can't quickly identify them and present to that personality. It's very detailed. What bank gives you here, which is what we're suggesting you have a look at today, is a process to quickly identify the type of customer that you might be dealing with from the point of view of how they buy things. So other tests are set up to figure out how's your personality and how can you have a good career with that. This platform or this framework is designed to help you identify prospects and their behaviors. So in summary, there's 4 of them, which is where the bank comes from, right? Blueprint, acting, nurturing, and knowledge. And there's some overlap between these, but we're going to go into them together and we're going to think about what kind of products will suit them better and how you might develop a sales process that addresses some of those. So just to recap, 4 types of personality. A classic one that we come across in sale is going to be your knowledge customer. So this is the type of person who respects data, facts, and efficiency. So you might have a 4-pager or a 2-pager prepared for your business that shows 5-star reviews that you've received, but from a statistical point of view, like we've done 100 systems, they've all been happy. You would put data in there about maybe the output of systems that you've done. So they'd be very interested to see what does a system make. This type of customer is also less likely to decide on the day. So this customer potentially will be quite well researched, the knowledge customer, and they're expecting you to be researched as well. So if you're identifying that, then you may need to do a bit more prep before you go on the sales call. And how could you identify that? Well, maybe they're going to call your business and immediately they're asking about, let's say, Solar Edge, they're asking about Enphase, they're asking about third generation Aiko products. That type of customer is almost certainly going to be a knowledge customer. There is another type that they might be, but we'll come to that. So I know the acronym is BANK, bank, and I've put K here first just because we do commonly come across these guys. The good news is that once you have success with one of these guys, they tend to have friendship groups that are based on that sort of technical respect. So classic one is they might be members of, let's say, Engineers Australia or retired railway engineers or something. And potentially you can be introduced to other people through that network. And you yourself might like to think about, are there categories of people that I don't know at Aiko? I don't know everyone in the world, how they work, but maybe you can identify these networks in your community and think about how you could use that. But you definitely can't come to these guys with no evidence of your claims. So they tend to be very suspicious of salesy people, and they want to get more numbers. So think about how you can identify the person that has this characteristic. I'd suggest it starts with the amount of research that they've done into solar. So maybe if the person who takes your leads at your business is maybe someone in the office, they may have some questions that you're going to have on hand for your staff to just quickly identify which person it is. And when you go to visit them, you can take that knowledge on board. So it might be that you have a script for your reception team, and the reception team might say, "Oh, thanks for calling us here at Tom's Solar. Yeah, okay, great. So you're looking to go solar. How much time have you been looking into this? Or what sort of technology are you looking at, or have looked at? So we can have the resources, this kind of thing." That I would leave up to you, but just to sort of set the direction that you want to be able to capture what kind of customer you are going to be dealing with. Another type of person that we commonly see in solar is the nurturing customer. So this is the type of person who volunteers. Maybe they're a Greens voter. They like to think of themselves as being community minded. So you might notice that they ride bikes everywhere or something like that. They're going to be more interested in things like your recycling and how you're going to deal with maybe the waste stream, or how you are doing with the community. Like, did you guys volunteer for Clean Up Australia Day or something like that? And you can pick them out, like when you see, as I say, things to do with the environment. Perhaps they have a thing that says like, no, don't put any brochures in our letterbox or something like that. So people with that sort of a philosophy will benefit from hearing about how you've chosen a panel that uses less trucks, has less waste, and will be interested to hear of the donations that your business might have made in the community. So the blueprint characteristic customers, more sort of like OCD, I guess you might say. They tend to be very risk averse. This is where maybe those safety points could come into play. If you identify someone is worried about their roof, so they might say to you a lot of questions about, like, are you going to make leaks in our roof, or things like this. Basically, the principle that you're looking to identify is a sense of worry. And for these particular customers, like, you got to be careful to be on time. You've got to be keeping in touch with them around if you're running late and so on. And then the other thing is that you would like to share details of your experience. So going back to the social proof, making sure that you have documents that show the factual outcome for customers. So many of our buyers will want to see customer X in Castle Hill. Like, let's say the suburb is Castle Hill in New South Wales. They'll want to see, ideally, another customer in Castle Hill that has had a concrete benefit, and you can show it with data. But the point is not the actual data. The point is customer had success. They're like me. And the other thing you might want to consider with these customers is going to be your neatness, like leaving rubbish behind, making sure everyone flushes the toilet on the team. So it's always a great time when you have one of your team members leave a mess in the amenities at the customer's house. So these type of customers, they're not going to be happy with you running late in terms of your appointments, but also in terms of the scheduling, they're going to want to keep you on that. And maybe there's a process you'll set up in your business to identify blueprint customers and then make sure those ones get served on time. If you need to delay jobs because staff are sick or there's bad weather, maybe you try not to impact their job as much as maybe others that are more flexible with you. So nurturing customers we just covered, but they are typically more flexible with changes. So if you're able to identify that that's a nurturing type, they will want to be amenable and agreeable to your requests for different changes. So for example, inverters running late or something, they may well accept that you're going to install that next week. So going to the other type is action customers. So this type of customer is like your stylish customer as well, can be more attracted to things like the full black panels. So you don't want to go into details with these people. And maybe you've met them in some leadership positions, you're presenting a lot of data and whatever, their eyes glaze over, they don't care. They're just like, okay, is it going to save me money? Yes or no? Yes, cool. What's it going to look like? Looks like this. Great, let's go ahead. So that type of customer, I guess you might say, is more interested in the grooming aspect. So if you knew that the customer was of this frame of mind, then you might, in your team, send out someone who is more in that sort of vein. So, for example, if you know the customer is an interior decorator, if you know the customer is a high-level musician, something in that sort of art space, then you may send out your sort of more well-groomed staff member, and you might send them out focusing on, the good-looking projects that you've done. They don't want to see data, but they may want to see a photo of jobs that you've done. So that's the difference. We go back to the knowledge-focused customers. They're wanting to see, okay, where's the statistics? These guys, they want to see pictures, happy faces, black panels on the roof. So that's where you do find that difficulty. Okay. All right. So that is the end of our presentation on sales. We did have some issues with the videos with that upgrade to click there. So I do apologize if you haven't seen that. So we're going to get that to offline. So I think the videos will be useful to people. So Elder, I haven't seen all the questions in the screen. Is there anything that we've maybe missed in terms of the questions that were coming in?
No, man, I think you did a great job. And I've jotted down some notes for people, and I'll we'll get back to you and follow up on all those questions. I just want to thank Thomas for his time today. I want to thank everyone also for staying. I know it went a little bit longer, but yeah, Thomas, you were great. And there's a ton of information that we can all glean out of that presentation. So we'll be in contact with everybody shortly. We'll send through those videos that unfortunately we're not able to play. I'll send through all kinds of data sheets, and yeah, we'll be in touch. If anyone has any questions for Thomas, for myself, AC Solar Warehouse, Aiko, please reach out. We'd be more than happy to assist you. So once again, thanks everyone. Thank you, Thomas. And yeah, that's all from us. Everyone have a great day.
See you later, guys. Have a Merry Christmas if I don't talk to you before then.